Hello beautiful souls, and welcome back to my channel Soul Journey. My name is Bec, and today I wanted to talk about soul contracts, specifically the idea of releasing soul contracts or breaking soul contracts. And I've heard a lot of things from both sides. I'm personally a fan of soul contracts. But I have heard people talk about this idea of you don't have to fulfill soul contracts, break soul contracts, release soul contracts so you can be free. So I wanted to talk about that mentality because I feel like it's rather damaging when it comes to really trusting your incarnation here. Now, this kind of stems back to the idea that being here on the planet is some sort of punishment, or the idea of like, oh, like I can't stand being on planet Earth, I know this is my last life, I'm not going to reincarnate again, I'm so glad this is my last life. And I feel like this is such a flawed mentality because that's such a resistant mentality, right? Because the idea of I don't want to be here anymore, this is my last life and I'm excited. I don't mean that it's not okay to like want to explore other things in the universe. That's fine. I'm talking about this idea of like, I'm uncomfortable here, I can't wait to leave. And if we really look at that mentality, it's really a mentality of resistance to what is, and kind of a lack of understanding of why we come here on the planet, and also the perspective of spirit when it comes to incarnating. And really for spirit and source, it's all about experience. It's all about experience through contrast so it can understand itself. Spirit doesn't have an attachment to whether something's comfortable or not. So when we incarnate here, there's no resistance to what the experience is going to be because it knows whatever it is, it's going to be soul expanding. So this concept of, I don't want to be here, I'm trapped, and all of these things is kind of a misunderstanding of why Source is here to begin with. So I wanted to talk about this when it comes to soul contracts. So I have talked to several people who are very much about breaking the soul contract. And for those of you who don't know what a soul contract is, a soul contract is where before you come into an incarnation, you basically set up with other beings and souls for an interaction that will aid in both of your expansion. And that's it. That's all it is. It's about kind of setting up the game board, and you have many life paths that you can partake in any incarnation. And basically you set up a whole bunch of options, and then once you're incarnated, then you have free will to navigate that said game board. There are some soul contracts that are much more likely to occur. I kind of see it as if you're in a maze, there are some paths that one or two paths are going to interact with someone, but other paths, 80% of your paths will converge into having an experience and then they'll go off again. So there are different soul contracts that are more likely to happen. For instance, soul family is going to be on a lot more of your paths than, say, a random interaction at a store, right? So these soul contracts aren't negative. They aren't, you're not bound to have any specific, you have free will is what I'm saying. And so this idea of you need to break your soul contracts, to release yourself from them, it kind of has this idea that if you have a contract, it's a very 3D concept of a contract, in the sense of, oh, I'm bound to have this, I have to play it out, I have no say in the matter, so I must release myself from this contract. And what most people, I think, don't understand from that perspective is part of the contract is your decisions around it. Part of the contract is the fact that you get to navigate it. So just as much as, meeting someone is a soul contract, leaving a relationship is also a part of the soul contract. There's no part of a contract where you no longer have free will. Playing it out is the soul contract. Playing out your free will is the soul contract. And so this concept of, let's do, and then this is different from a tie cutting ritual. And I want to like explain that in the sense of tie cutting is about energetic cutting of ties. And personally, I feel like that's even a little, that is an interesting concept because it is a form of separation, and we know ultimately there is oneness, but there are energetic pulls, and it really has to do with wounds. I believe if you do your shadow work and you heal your wounds and you work through them, there is no need to cut ties, because you will naturally integrate into yourself the experience, and you will no longer feel like you have those ties in the sense in an unhealthy sense. So even that, the cutting of the ties, I feel like is almost like bandaging a wound, covering up a wound when there needs to be surgery inside. There needs to be an exploration of why you're still connected to that being. And so just cutting them seems premature, but that's another topic. And I feel like people have this idea that a soul contract is those energetic ties, that somehow you are bound to this other being, and until you release that contract, you are somehow tethered to that other being, more than the idea of oneness. And again, this idea of breaking soul contracts, cutting ties, it really plays into a very 3D mentality, because if we understand that everything is us and everything is a reflection of us, if you're having a bad experience with another being, it's because you're a vibrational match to it. And that's what you need to explore. You need to explore what you're focusing on. You need to understand why that's coming up for you. This idea of cutting them off because it's them, because you feel trapped because of them, is a very dualistic perspective, because ultimately you can't be having an experience if you're not a vibrational match to it. So I want to kind of dispel this myth of that soul contracts are somehow a restriction. Soul contracts are put there by us before we incarnate, because we understand how much learning and expansion we can have from them. So the myth that, they're somehow not letting us be free, that we need to cut them so we can be free, is not taking really responsibility for why we aren't expanding. Yeah? I'm making a video. You can come say hi.
Hi. Goodbye, I love you.
I love you. All interactions are a reflection of where you're at. If you're feeling trapped, explore why you're feeling trapped. Explore why this is a vibrational match to you. And that's not a victim blaming. That is understanding how the universe works. A vibrational match is just a vibrational match. And you have the free will to remove yourself from any situation as you shift that vibration. So it's important to understand. And I want to also clarify, I feel like this idea of, the illusion of the 3D is also not honoring the fact that this is a real dimension. We are experiencing a dimension. This is all very real. Just because it's very real doesn't mean there isn't more to the story. That doesn't mean that there isn't ways to navigate this reality in a more healthy way. So I want to clarify that too, just saying, the 3D is not, it's just all vibration. Just, that's not inherently true. If you're in a painful situation, acknowledging that it's a vibrational match is a very empowering space, but then it also takes action. It takes your awareness and choosing a different mindset, choosing how you're going to interact in that. And then, physical action is important, because we are also in the physical. So there's a lot of layers. It's about layers. So if you're in a soul contract that doesn't feel good, it's important to understand that that's what the soul contract is about. It's to bring up the discomfort so that you can learn something, and then you can navigate towards what feels good and what's in alignment with you. So soul contracts here are for expansion. That's it. Anything past that is your own free will, how you want to navigate that. So I just wanted to dispel this myth of that soul contracts are traps, or that they're somehow not letting you be free in your own creation. Soul contracts were created by you just before you incarnated. There's no, it's not, some sort of punishment. It's not some sort of holding you back. Now, I want to say there are certain soul contracts you made that do hold you back because you wanted the experience of learning freedom. That is also a soul contract. So it's important to understand that, yeah, there are no bad soul contracts. There are just ones that maybe feel good versus ones that don't feel good. And they're there. You had that contract with that soul to come in and, kind of wake you up a little bit, to have you, and it's all about coming back to mindfulness. When there's something that's uncomfortable, or even something that feels good, be mindful. Why is this coming up? How is this a reflection of me? And then you can navigate that in a much more healthy way. And so that's really what soul contracts are about. So I really feel like it's important that we understand that we are autonomous beings no matter what situation we are in. Everything always is a choice. It can often feel like a difficult choice. It can often feel, when you fear pain or death or any of these uncomfortable things, which understandably are very painful, it can feel like it's not a choice. But ultimately, you always have a choice what your experience is going to be, because it's all about how you're going to come to the table. It's not about what you're experiencing. It's about how you're going to react to it. There have been a lot of beings who have very peacefully, when we look from the outside, are like, wow, this is a terrible situation, but they were centered and peaceful within their being. And so they had a very different experience than, say, someone else who would feel like a victim. So it's really important to understand that you have the choice, and you can navigate anything autonomously, because as a being, that is your experience. So all of these are just lessons. All of these are things we get to navigate in the 3D. And the 3D isn't the only piece. It's not the only story. It's just one chapter. And we will come back to this, this place many, many, many times. And it's not a punishment. It's actually one of the best places for soul expansion, because there's so much contrast, so much we have to move through. It's very physical. So it actually creates some of the biggest expansion. So that's why Spirit loves coming here. Spirit loves 3D worlds, because there's so much contrast. And through contrast is our biggest growth. And that's very, very exciting. So anyway, that's what today's video was about. Definitely comment down below if you have any questions or comments, of course, with love. We love this to be a safe space for productive conversation and, teaching and connecting and really being open to sources' perspectives, because we are all source and we are all having different perspectives and we can all learn from each other. So definitely comment down below. And if you like this video, give it a like and hit subscribe if you want to see more videos like this in the future. I like to do energy readings for the collective every Friday, if I can get to it, if it's self-loving. And we talk about connecting to spirit, channeling, self-love, sustainable living, all that yummy good stuff. So if that resonates with you, definitely subscribe. And if you want to check out my other social media platforms, those are in the description down below, along with my Etsy shop where I do personal readings and have other yummy soul journey tools. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Many blessings. Namaste. And don't forget, it is all about the soul journey.